and welcome to Views on News. I'm your host Rafiq Ball, and tonight we'll be unpacking the trade policy that the US President Donald Trump announced and how it's going for Pakistan. Of course, we know that Pakistan and the United States have reached a trade deal framework ahead of Donald Trump's deadline. Well, when we talk about the backdrop of this development, the American President Donald Trump had earlier announced imposing new tariffs on all the trade partners, and this list of the trade partners included Pakistan as well as a part of his Make America Great Again campaign. There was a positive momentum of talks if we talk about the negotiations with Pakistan and the US. According to sources, an agreement on a trade and tariff deal framework had been reached with both the sides' representatives saying that they had made significant progress in the talks. However, a formal announcement is expected after the US concludes the negotiation with all other trade partners as well. Pakistan's delegation that was negotiating the tariff talks with the US was headed by the Commerce Secretary Jawad. The main objective of these talks with regards to Pakistan's perspective was the long-term reciprocal tariff agreement that would prevent the reimposition of 29% tariffs on the Pakistani exports. In light of this, the Pakistani financial think tanks had warned that the country would lose 20 to 25% of its exports in light of these increased tariffs. Pakistan's finance minister, in light of this development, had earlier stated and also hinted that both the countries are moving in the right direction and the talks that are being held are very productive and cordial. The US Treasury Secretary, in an interview with the CNN earlier, stated that countries that do not reach a deal with the US with regards to the increased tariffs would face higher tariffs from 1st of August. Trump's Make America Great Again campaign also focused on the BRICS countries when we talk about the tariff policy that he is introducing, and he announced that an additional 10% tariff rate would be imposed on all the BRICS member states. So far, if we talk about the countries that have concluded their negotiations with the US, only China, United Kingdom and Vietnam have announced that they have reached the agreements with the US with regards to the new tariff that they will impose from after the deadline. We'll be deliberating on the different aspects of Donald Trump's new policy, how it is going to impact the global economy and how it is going to impact Pakistan in particular, as we know that the Pakistani government is focused on increasing the country's exports and is also focused on promoting Made in Pakistan. So these are the different aspects that we'll be deliberating on. In the studios, we've been joined by former Foreign Secretary Muhammad Saleem. So thank you for your time and being part of the conversation. Of course, very major development that we see with regards to the economic front and the diplomatic front. Trump announced these new tariff policy, and of course he also said that it would affect all the trade partners. Pakistan and the US, one of the largest trade partners that Pakistan has. It is going to affect Pakistan as well. We know the government is focused on increasing the exports, but at the same time, when we see this new tariff policy, it does create confusions in the Pakistani financial markets. When we talk about this policy in particular, from the global aspect, do you think it's a part of the Make America Great Again campaign, it's an economic policy, or a diplomatic instrument that the president is using?
It's definitely a part of the MAGA thing. Make America Great Again, and how's that? Very simply, President Trump believes that America has lost its manufacturing edge.
Yeah.
And because of that, it has lost millions of jobs, which he wants to bring back. And he thinks that is essential to solidify the American middle class, which is his core constituency, by the way. And in order to do that, what he believes is that America needs to get more favorable trade access from other countries. He felt that a lot of countries in the world, they were imposing high tariffs on the US exports to those countries. On the other hand, America did not have sufficient tariffs on the imports from those countries. So that's what he was trying to change. And in fact, when he announced this policy the last time, when he a series of tariffs all over the world on literally all the major exporters in the world, he had actually given a chart of what tariff they were charging on US exports and what US was charging on their exports. And there was quite a bit of disparity there. Although basically I'm one of those who believes that this policy, the basic premise is not right, because America is not a manufacturing economy. It's a knowledge-based economy which would actually benefit more by sort of, just investing on tech and sort of, and
exactly. And sorry to cut you here, but there's a question that comes to mind. Would the middle class American want to go back to the manufacturing sector? Would they want to have those jobs that, of course, demand labor and sweat, whereas America being a developed nation, they have skilled labor force coming in from the developing countries. Do you think the middle class American would want to work in those industries back again?
Now, these are the internal dynamics of America's economy. This is about the states,
Yeah.
The Midwestern states. Well, that's where Trump has more support. The Rust Belt states, so to speak, like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, sort of, Minnesota, and all these states, sort of, which used to rely upon. Detroit, for example, was the capital of car industry, automobile industry in the U.S. They are the core constituency of Trump. The economy has changed. It has shifted more to California. That's where all the big tech companies are, or New York. But Trump's core support is not in California, not in New York. So that is the dichotomy there. But coming back to the earlier point that you made, so what did Trump do then? He imposed a range of tariffs all over the world, on countries. And then he basically asked them to give them some time to negotiate.
Yeah.
So it is very interesting, his policy. What he does is, he basically, in some ways, he applies what is called the madman theory, because you become very unpredictable, and that gives you a lot of leverage. So he doesn't really want to impose all those tariffs, although he said that tariff is his favorite word in English and all that.
Yeah.
But the actual fact was that he was just coaxing those countries, or in some ways coercing those countries in reducing tariffs for the U.S. exports to those countries, because he believes that America, America has the biggest trade deficit in the world by far, over $1 trillion almost. And he believes that contributes to loss of jobs, that contributes to sort of American industry shifting outside America, and that contributes to the huge debt that they have. The premise, in my view, and I can explain that, although not probably here, because we don't really have time for that. The premise is faulty, but so far as his his political needs are concerned, I think for that, to bring the manufacturing jobs back to America and to reduce tariffs for American exports, I think it's the right policy.
But when we talk about Donald Trump's own political needs and, of course, how this tariff policy is going to affect the global economy, do you think it would contribute to a global trade war rather than, of course, helping Donald Trump out with his own political needs domestically?
I mean, the U.S. started a trade war in the world by sort of, this policy of his, which is not just a trade policy, it's part of his foreign policy agenda in a way. So it did start, but the good thing is also that Trump is very flexible. He's not inflexible. So he's, first he kind of, he gives a threat or he imposes tariffs, and then he's willing to negotiate. And that is why, all the countries have begun negotiations with the U.S., which are at varying stages of fruition. Pakistan's negotiations, as you know, have almost sort of culminated, and we have a deal, just before, just a week before the deadline was sort of, concluding. But now they have extended the deadline. The deadline, which was supposed to be 7th of July, has been extended to the 1st of August. So that very clearly it shows that the purpose is not to sort of, begin a trade war, but the purpose was rather to literally, encourage these countries and have more leverage towards reducing tariffs for U.S. exports.
So opportunity in crisis, how do you think that plays out for Pakistan?
I think you've used the right term. It was a challenge in the first place. It was a crisis because you see, U.S. is our biggest sort of, import in the world. We get our biggest trade surplus from the U.S. And 80 or to 90% of our exports to the U.S. are textiles, which is the mainstay of our export sort of repertoire. Now, in the beginning, when he imposed, the U.S. imposed 29% tariff on Pakistan's exports to the U.S., and that was even more than what they imposed on India, which is 26%, although it was lesser than Vietnam, for instance, and Laos and China, but still, and even lesser than what they had imposed on Bangladesh, but still, it was, more than India. And it would have been, would have definitely resulted in a sort of, a shrinking of Pakistan's exports to the U.S. But then they wanted to negotiate. And since then, we have had a very positive negotiation with the U.S., the Secretary of Commerce. Now, this is not just the only delegation which went there. There were early delegations, and a lot of ground was covered. But now they're giving the final touches to that, and it's concluded. Sort of, they would announce that and the details of it, which would be beneficial for Pakistan. Because what the US wants is, they're not just interested about trade, it's also investment. They want to invest in Pakistan in the field of energy, for instance, infrastructure, for instance, and mining in particular, and that mining is an area of great sort of, focus for President Trump. And for Pakistan, it's important as well, because we, in Balochistan, in other parts of Pakistan, we have huge mineral resources which are literally crying to be developed. And the US companies have the technology for that. Reko Diq, for instance, is going to be developed by this Barrick Gold, which is a Canadian company. But if the US companies come along, there's so much more that could be done there. So, and for that, what they're also saying is that Exim Bank, the Export-Import Bank in the US, which generally gives loans to those companies or guarantees to those companies sometimes, would get involved as well. So I see this as sort of, as very positively. I think it's very sanguine, the direction things have taken in terms of the economic or commercial relations between Pakistan and the US.
Definitely, but you mentioned a lot of sectors that the US would be keen to invest in, such as the mines and mineral sector, energy sector. Why not invest in human resource development? Of course, bringing me back to my earlier question, that would the American middle class want to work in those industries back again? Would they want to go back to those factories? Would they want to have those labor jobs? Whereas at the same time, Pakistan exports a lot of labor to the developed world, and of course, skilled labor. There's not as skilled as the international job market demands, but more work could be done on the human resource development, and America could also capitalize from the Pakistani skilled labor force.
Okay, that could be an area to set, probably in certain segments, for example, nursing is one segment. Yeah. But on the whole, that is not the sort of, the essence of Trump's policies. Yeah. Because he believes that sort of, perhaps a little less immigration would suit America. He believes that America's own human resources need to be used better. And he believes that they have been neglected for quite a while. So I don't really, as much as I would like to say that I see a lot of hope there, I don't think that would be an area of sort of immediate cooperation, because Trump's and his administration's focus right now is not on that. In fact, if anything, they're trying to sort of, repatriate, or they're trying to deport a lot of those. In America, there are an estimated 11 million illegal immigrants who are working on a lot of jobs which the Americans normally don't want to. So they are trying to push some of them out, and they're trying to get more jobs for their own economy. I think it's a political question as well, because okay, if it were Democrat Party, would be different. But for Republican Party, which has its sort of core support amongst the middle class workers, I think that would not be a very popular policy. So probably the likelihood of that happening in a big way, in my view, is less sanguine.
So political capital versus make America great again. But at the same time, when we talk about Pakistan in particular, an agrarian economy, as we know, the textile sector contributes a lot to the exports Pakistan's make, and the tariff policy that we're seeing, it is going to heavily impact these sectors in particular. The government is also focused on increasing the exports. How do you think that plays with how this situation is going on? And in the recent past, we've also seen how the US President Donald Trump has praised Pakistan both as a nation and as a country for being a very resilient nation, a brave nation, and a very responsible nation. Bilateral ties between both the countries with regards to the increased trade agreements that we're seeing. What's your take on that?
Yeah, the trajectory of bilateral ties is very positive. It's upwards, and that's a matter of much satisfaction. At the same time, we have to be sort of, there are certain areas of cooperation which need to be strengthened, and sort of, like we have already mentioned some. Now, in terms of what you earlier mentioned, human resource, there's one possibility though. Pakistan has, we have 4th or 5th largest number of IT skilled workers in the world. Now, these workers, America would not encourage these workers to go to the US. Although, because they already have some sort of a glut now coming from India and China and other countries. But what the possibility is, because, for IT, in ICT, in this field, you don't really have to be physically present there.
Exactly.
You can work from anywhere in the world, and still, because it's all online. So the possibility for Pakistan, now we are earning $3.5 to $4 billion from our IT exports, our software exports in particular. That is nothing. India is earning $150 billion, like if everything is included. And this is a great disparity, because the population is just 6 times bigger, right? So the actual potential for Pakistan is 30 to 40 billion dollars, in the next, let's say, 10 years horizon or earlier. It depends how we sort of, play it out. So in that area, I think there's great possibility. We could sort of, we could make the playing field more level there. We could come up with some mechanisms there whereby the American companies, they sort of, outsource more of their work to Pakistani sort of freelancers or Pakistani ICT companies. And that would be great, because then you won't have to export these people, but you just export their services. And you get even sort of, more benefits, because, a worker who goes there in America and works, let's say, as a cab driver, earns, decently. But it can't be compared to an IT worker, even if he's working from here, and a qualified sort of, a skilled ICT worker can earn many times more. So I think that is where we need to really focus, because IT is, because even now there are estimates that the actual sort of, the sort of money that is earned by our IT industry is about $8 to $9 billion, but most of it is not channeled through the official channels. If we could sort of, encourage that, and if we could further sort of, incentivize that, and if that industry reaches $20 billion, $25 billion, that would be a game changer for Pakistan. So I think that is where we need to focus now.
Definitely. Out of the box solutions is what's the need of the hour, and as earlier mentioned, opportunity in crisis. Thank you, Saleem, a former Foreign Secretary, for your time and your valuable insights, always appreciated, and a very significant development and high time which Pakistan could capitalize on when we talk about the economic sphere. As the conversation has so far built up, the talks that were going on between both the countries, they're on a very positive momentum, and this is the momentum that Pakistan could capitalize on to further boost its bilateral ties with the US and its economic cooperation with the US as well. On video link, we have been joined by another guest, Shikoh Atif, who is a senior economist. Thank you for your time and being part of the conversation, joining us for this very important development. When we talk about this new tariff policy, of course, it is going to impact the global economy. It is going to impact Pakistan as well. But your take on the policy itself as part of the Make America Great Again campaign?
For sure, thanks. So it's a policy that lots of people don't appreciate, that it's a policy that would impact the American middle class before it impacts anyone else. It is a good idea to change their behavior and make everything that they're used to getting for less expensive, more expensive. So everything that the common person in the US purchases will become more expensive, coming from places like China, from Pakistan, from India. And then they will have a behavioral shift, and they will say, okay, let's buy and build things in the US. That's a long-term project, but there's going to be a lot of pain for the American middle class in the short run. So it's a very risky initiative by Donald Trump to impose tariffs on the American public. But in the long run, it's a statesman move. Organizations might start building in America rather than building in China, India, Pakistan, to bring jobs back to the US. Now, it is really important to look at the favorable outlook of the US on Pakistan presently, because it's
Sorry to cut you here, but there's another aspect that I'd like to ask you. Would the American middle class want to go back to working in the factories and in the domestic industries?
forgive me, repeat, please.
Well, I was asking, would the middle class American want to go back to working in the factories, or have immigrants working there and America getting the skilled labor that they have been exporting since quite long now?
For sure. The thing is, with AI coming in, artificial intelligence, there's a shift in the skill set of the labor as well. The biggest employer in the US is the trucking industry. And that when that goes to self driving vehicles, what are all the people going to do? So, Donald Trump's initiative is to bring these middle class manufacturing jobs back to the US.
Okay, very important point made. I'd like to include Dr. Muhammad Navid, who is a global financial expert and has joined us in the studio. Thank you for your time and being part of the conversation. We were discussing the US President's tariff policy that he had announced for all the trade partners. Of course, when we talk about Pakistan in particular, we also discuss the global impacts, but when we talk about Pakistan in particular, a 29% tariffs. An agreement has been almost reached between the two sides. What do you say about Pakistan concluding this agreement before the deadline is here?
Thank you for having my voice on. I would say it's a very path-breaking time that you have engaged my thoughtfulness. Goodwill gesture is there. What we are looking into the geopolitical scenario, definitely it's the right time where we have to see it's a global economy have a reshift. So this a global reshift that's happening in the entire world. Pakistan could see it's one of the best opportunity where we have to bring a turnaround.
Yeah.
How we have to go by design, this is very important. For me, the biggest the challenge that right now the protective approach on the part of the American economy they are facing.
Yeah.
Definitely, if we have to see 5.41 trillion, it's the global trading volume of the US economy. I have to see the 62% of the debt, the trade deficit that has been associated. Pakistan is at the number of 33rd in terms of our contribution towards the trade deficit that we are adding to the US economy.
Yeah.
So 80% of the deficit that is associated with the top 10 economies of the world. So from this perspective, I think it's the best opportunity for the Pakistan. Now I have to see, I use the word we have to go by design thinking. It's the best time for Pakistan. You have to bring a diversification of your exports portfolio. I have to bring more value intensive exports.
Well, that's a very important point that you've highlighted, and we'll come towards the export factor as well. But I'd like Mr. Atif's take on as well. As earlier you mentioned a statesman move by President Trump. When we talk about the impacts of protectionism, do you think it would break down the already existing trade agreements that the US has with its trade partners, and the other long-term impacts do you think this kind of protectionism policy would have for the US?
So he's been using this, as you very eloquently put it, protectionism as a strategy to grant access to the US consumer. Any celebration of any agreement with Donald Trump comes with a tremendous degree of risk because he's a very transactional president. We may be celebrating right now, but one demand of his, whether fair or unfair, and we will go back to being really not in his good books. So yes, it is a tremendous opportunity for Pakistan to capture the export market share that we've really been lagging behind in. Countries like us have been exporting 10 times what we are exporting at 32, 33 Arab dollars. So it is a tremendous opportunity, but we must look at it from the point of view of end. We have to grant the US access to the tremendous size of the Pakistani market as well, because we have a lot of assets in our youth that we can make available. We have a lot of assets in our mining sector, and we can purchase a lot of the American crude oil, which they are really interested in selling to us.
And Mr. Atif, there's another aspect. As you mentioned, a lot of potential in the country's youth. America would be interested in investing in the mining sector, in the agriculture sector, in the energy sector. But investing in the country's youth, America would need human skilled labor force to work, and Pakistan has a huge youth bulge. Don't you think they could also invest in human resource development and capitalize from Pakistan youth, particularly as we talk about the immigration factor with regards to Trump's policy? IT sector could be one which is outsourced to Pakistan and they get the desired results.
That's a great point. You know, between 2013 and 2018, the US started a US-Pakistan knowledge corridor, which was an amazing idea. That was developing links between universities in the US and giving Pakistani youth access to them. I know that under Udan, Pakistan is going back a little bit to that, but there needs to be to your point, there needs to be a tremendous focus on that if we need to make use of this youth bulge. Because if we do not, then there's going to be dire consequences as well.
Okay, moving towards Dr. Naveed. When we talk about the impacts that Pakistan is going to have, the government is focused on increasing the country's exports. We know there's a boom and bust cycle in the country, and to tackle that, the government wants to increase the exports and reduce the imports. But when we see this new policy and the agreement that's shaping up, how do you think that's going to gel in with the country's national policies?
I think it's the right time to say the welcome to the new age. I'm still very optimistic. Every year, the 50,000 IT graduates that we have, I can see it's my strength in the long run. I use the word we have to be more valued in terms of our exports. It's the right time we have to reprioritize the Pakistan exports classification. If we are putting top of the list, that's your IT professionals, you have to bring your mapping, that is with the IT giants. Silicon Valley, very stationed. Every second development is happening in the world. The biggest, the hub of the venture capital, 1/3 venture capital, it has entirely changed the financial system of the world that have the representation in the USA. I think you have to be in the long run. Definitely what the fellow panelist, what he said, the Trump government is a bit unconventional. We have the idea, they are not factoring the long-term perspective. But I have to go with my strength. When I see the history of Pakistan, whether it's a capital account, whether it's a current account, I can see only 2 times in the history Pakistan current account have a surplus. I think it's the best opportunity where we have to bring a turnaround. Pakistan exports volume is a peanut, I would say. It's the right time you have to revisit your tariff policy as well. It need to be more exports oriented. It has to be more, I would say, coming towards the orientation which is coming with the advantage that we want to take with the strength. So for me, the youth bulge, you use the word, your youth bulge is basically your skill set is there. In terms of the your close eye, we have the most refinest, we have the most critical mines and the minerals. I think this is the important segment that we have to classify. Now, what is the way forward? This is more important. If I have to see the protectionist approach, the word I have used, the Pakistan definitely is not adding the biggest contribution towards the deficit which associated with the global deficits of the USA. So from this perspective, Pakistan, you have to bring your economic hegemony. If I have to see what the share of the Pakistan is adding in the global economy, it's a peanut. My neighbor economies, they have increased their share, it's more than 300 billions. So I think we have to think by design, it's the right time on putting more significance towards the export items. These export items, they are more value intensive. I was looking into the top 10 sectoral contributors for the US economy. To my surprise, the pharmaceutical and IT, India is the biggest contributor. I have my strength. I think my son, he used to call me, Baba, you belong to the age of the dinosaur. I think we have to realize the significance. We have to bring this pulse. This pulse is more important. You have to bring with the integration of the digital patterns. My fellow, he used the word, it's the right time where we have to sign a global economy. Your free trade liberalization is there. You also start thinking about your digital economy agreements with the USA. You have to think about your knowledge economy drives with the USA. End of the day, you have to bring the mobility of your skill capital. This skill capital, whether it brings the remittance back in country, whether it brings the new ways of your trading, end of the day, Pakistan have to be more capitalized. I was looking into the perspective of the USA when we are looking into this potential thoughtfulness. They are looking into 3 perspectives. They want to bring some facilitation which is associated with the classification of the few items. Soybean, top of the list. They start thinking about that we have to bring some facilitation which is associated with the crude oil as well.
Right.
I think Pakistan already putting 90% of the exemptions to the USA. It's the right time Pakistan put forward itself towards the benefit of the globalization. Globalization is definitely, the other side is a downside risk. We have to see the localization aspect is there. More exploitation of the local manufacturer could be there. But we are not looking at the upside. Upside of the globalization is also very important. If I have to survive as an industry today, if I am a local manufacturer, I have to be with the harmonization of the global standards also. I have to bring the quality of my product. I have to be more standardized. End of the day, we are not going to have any pampering of your local manufacturer. You have to improve yourself. So I want to see the comparativeness would be there, where we have to bring more reforms.
A very important point that you have raised, Dr. Naveed. Moving towards Mr. Atif, and I'd like on this. When we talk about this new policy that we're seeing, it will affect the exports Pakistan makes to the US, but the agreement that is being reached and how it is concluding, we're also seeing it is also going to affect the imports that Pakistan will be making from the US. And we know that the Pakistani government is focused on increasing competition in the Pakistani markets. As a part of the new tariff policy reforms that we're seeing. Mr. Atif, what's your take on how these two are going to gel in, imports from the US and Pakistan curbing down its imports? while at the same time increasing its exports?
So our exchange rate policy impacts the US imports into Pakistan very negatively. Because of the strength of the dollar, it becomes terribly expensive for anyone in Pakistan to purchase anything coming out of the US. However, there are things that we have no options on, and it's good to not have options, because then what that would do is that would give a baseline for the Pakistani manufacturer that okay, so this is the price of this coming from the US. We can go and manufacture at this lower level, making use of our better exchange rate and our cheaper valuation of the rupee. And that's actually what industrializes nations. So US is an amazing, as a benchmark, is amazing, because unfortunately Pakistani manufacturer cannot cannot compete many times with the Chinese manufacturer, because we don't have that much of an exchange rate advantage on them. So, but the US benchmark is an interesting one, especially crude oil. Yes, we have options, so we can purchase from there. Recently, and only a couple of months ago, US became the largest exporter of LNG in the world, leaving Qatar behind. So I know that Pakistan had a tremendous LNG agreement with Qatar many years ago, which we let dissolve, led by someone. But now we have Qatar has competition, and we can also purchase LNG and from the US, help with our energy needs.
Okay, coming towards Dr. Naveed, when we talk about competition in the Pakistani markets and this new development that we're seeing, how do you think that's going to play out?
Definitely, it's a trade-off. I'm not going to see the downside only. I think the history of the Pakistan needs some out-of-the-box thinking.
Yeah.
It's the right time. I use the word diversification. We are not only having a diversification in terms of the portfolio of the exports, we also need to find new trading partners as well. Putting out more dependencies, what's happening right now, the BRICS is the challenging, becoming more challenge for the USA, since they start thinking that we have to bring the new currency zone. End of the day, they want to discourage the dependencies on the USA. If you see, the starting of my voice was, it is the turnaround of the global economy.
Yeah.
So we have to take our advantage. Pakistan's share in the global economy, it's a peanut. I think if you have to start thinking about the diversification, why not you looking at other avenues as well?
Yeah.
You can, your Gulf Alliance is there, your Eastern Asia, Central Asia, China, go with the free trade agreements. I think it would give the new avenues to the manufacturing side of your local, the window of the manufacturer as well. So from this perspective, I think it's a both side of the coin. If you have to start looking into the downside risk is the loss. I said over the history of the Pakistan, we have experienced 2 times the surplus. Always my eye is coming, that is on the current account. Current account is not going to give you sustainable growth. Your sustainability of the growth is associated with the capital account. Yeah. Capital account is basically how we are going to have the acquisition of new assets, how you have to bring FDI, how your exports are coming with the diversity of the different avenues. So I think it's the right time. We have to diversify our export partners as well, and we have to bring the biggest thing that is more associated. We have to shift our focus from the current account more towards a capital account. Capital account would give you the growth. This growth is more sustainable. Current account, what you have, we call it's a working capital for economy. You have to look into whether it's a systemic happening over the period of time.
Yeah.
But if you have to sustain as an economy in the long run, so I think it is the right turnaround situation for Pakistan.
So, in simple words, don't put your eggs in the same basket. Mr. Atif, coming towards you, when we talk about the global impacts that this policy is going to have, do you think it is going to give impetus to global trade wars, this new Make America Great Again policy, and the tariffs that we're seeing on the trade partners?
Sure. So, all in all, I think it's a wonderful initiative, and all in all, I think we should strategize accordingly and benefit from this once in a generation opportunity. However, there is a trade-off there, and the trade-off is the lack of stability that this policy is immersed in, not only in the Pakistani economy but all over the globe. So one thing that Pakistan does not need right now is more, or the globe does not need right now, is lack of stability, because Pakistan has really paid a tremendous price to become as stable an economy and a country as it is, and it does right now. So uh, I think Pakistan and the present leadership is navigating and balancing these two really quite well, and I am certain that with this the initiative of Udan Pakistan, I think Pakistan is going to be able to navigate this well. Donald Trump is one person that really values one-on-one relationships, and I think our present one of our leaders went over and did a great job of developing those relationships.
Global leadership, when we talk about this new policy, the BRICS member states have been told they would face an increased 10% tariff. Your take on the measures that they would have to take, or what impacts would the global economy would have from this tariff policy?
So a lot of the economists suspect that it was all about China. But now that the China debate has been settled with tariffs, as far as tariffs is concerned, and many European countries have settled down as well. The one thing that the BRICS countries have, that Pakistan also has, is a tremendous potential purchasing power. So US also has to sell its goods to somewhere. BRICS includes countries like Russia, like countries like India, like but Donald Trump has an individual relationship with this. So while BRICS has been coming out with statements altogether, but trust me, it is a very individualistic relationship that Donald Trump wants to cultivate with India, with Russia, etc. So I don't put too much emphasis on what BRICS said. Recently, I'm in Toronto right now. Recently, there was a G7 here. The group 7 countries in the world were here. Donald Trump was here as well. And G7 group came out with a statement. At the end of the day, to be honest with you, Donald Trump has an individual relationship with each country, and the US has an individual relationship with each country. What these blocks say don't matter as much. So we are really grateful and happy right now that Pakistan has this opportunity as an individual country, not a part of any bloc or whatever. Pakistan is doing a great job of navigating and balancing our relationship with the US and China presently as well, because that's one thing that is a very a tightrope that Pakistan is walking very diligently.
Yeah, definitely. Mr. Shikoh, Atif, thank you for your time and being part of the conversation. Your insights are much appreciated. Coming towards the studios, towards Dr. Naveed. As I mentioned earlier, and you mentioned as well, the BRICS member states, additional 10% tariff on them. What do you say about that?
I think it's once again unconventional approach. It's coming from a USA.
Yeah, quite unconventional.
It's quite unconventional. So from this perspective, I think.
But it's a heads-on approach, don't you think?
It's a head-on approach is there, but I have to see in the long run, definitely the navigation on the part of the diplomatic eye, Pakistan is doing far better. We have taken the advantage of that. But end of the day, if you have to bring a reforms and these reforms are more sustainable, Pakistan, we have to look very holistically. Yeah. We are not looking into, in terms of the damages, I would say. For instance, these reciprocal taxes, they have some adverse impact on Pakistan economy. It's going to hurt 14 to 16% of the overall exports of Pakistan. Yeah. I think Pakistan at 33rd number in terms of the damages that we are adding to the global economy of the USA in terms of our exports. So Pakistan, I think, still have the big turnaround. So I would go with the same understanding. Pakistan should have the diversification of the partners. Even we have to look into, it's the right time for Pakistan as well. We have to bring some reforms. We have a second budget as well. It's a sustainability, your sustainable watch on the climate change. Definitely, it's the policy harmonization with the USA, I would say. Yeah. Pakistan start thinking about, we don't have a taxonomy in Pakistan. It's the right time where Pakistan is looking into the development of a taxonomy. If we have to integrate sustainability, that is towards our reforms on the biodiversity. Yeah. But also an important segment which is associated. For me, the strength of the Pakistan is a youth bulge, and the youth bulge, I would say, they are sitting with I said you before, they are the IT experts. Yeah. They want to bring the reforms. So Pakistan, we have to be more value intensive in terms of the portfolio of our exports. So it's definitely bring a turnaround in the capital account of Pakistan and would bring more revenue that is giving a long-term surplus to the current account as well.
And in the global lens, when we talk about the global trade disruptions that it's going to have, this policy reform, what do you think how do you think it's going to affect the global manufacturing and tech sectors?
Globally, you have to look into the key projections. What the IMF outlook is there, what is the organization that we have for the economies and the cooperation for the development economy. It's a negative outlook is there. Even they revisited the global growth of the top 20 European economies as well. So things are not positive. The world is looking into it's a systemic risk. It could have another spillover impact that we have, like we received in 2007-8. There is a GFC was there. It has a spillover impact that have this systemically hit across all the economies of the world. So from a global perspective as well, it's going to have adverse impact. So, but when we see for Pakistan, I think global economy is there. Pakistan could bring it itself as a supplementary, I would say. Where is the digital supply chain of Pakistan? You have to find your digital patterns are there. You have to start looking into your partnership with the Gulf Alliance, with the China. I think Pakistan should go with the diversification. So for me, the biggest advantage Pakistan can have, starting from the knowledge economy, more IT intensive, Pakistan should bring the diversification. And
definitely. Diversification, point very well noted. But Dr. Naveed, what I'm trying to analyze and trying to shape up here is that we live in a digital era, we live in an era of technology, and in the past, recent past, we've seen how DeepSeek, a Chinese AI, produced at a fourth of the cost that the US companies had produced, still functioning as good as them. When we talk about this tariff policy and the manufacturing sector and the tech sector, how do you think that is going to be affected? Because we know we're living in an era where it's a race for technology and the digital age.
I think we are already paying the cost.
We
are paying the cost of lack of adaptability. It's a right time.
But what about the world community, not just us?
The world community, I think it's a beautiful romance on the both sides. It's on the both sides. If we have to see, definitely integration of the technology, definitely it would bring more efficiency, your outreach would be there. You want to make your system which is more predictable. But on the other side, definitely your skill set has changed. If you want to bring the demonstration of the skill set, so definitely all those your skill labor, they don't have the adaptability of the IT. They could find it, see one of the systemic hit they are facing. So this romance is not only for Pakistan, this romance is for the entire world. So end of the day, what we need to have a demonstration. You have to demonstrate economic value. This economic value, whether it's associated with the IT, it's associated with your knowledge economy, it's associated with your environment as well. You have to bring the economic value. So end of the day, it's the economic value. If my economic value is greater as with the adaptation of the IT, with the latest, I would say the tech world, so definitely I have to look into my surplus against a deficit. So it's a trade-off, I would say.
Trade-off, very well put, Dr. Naveed, and a trade-off that goes well for both the sides, of win-win situation, as all of the panelists have concluded. And what we're seeing is a very crucial turning point in not just the global economy, but in Pakistan's economy as well. Ties with the US, both bilaterally and on the economic front, they are at an all-time high, and the momentum that is currently can be further capitalized on by the Pakistani government as they seek to increase the country's exports and at the same time increase competitiveness in the Pakistani consumer markets. That's all from Views on News for today. See you all same time tomorrow. Till then, take care.